Hello, welcome to this walkthrough for Filmstro Pro V3. I'm going to do a full cycle demo of the whole workflow. So I'm going to just grab a piece of footage, make a custom soundtrack as quick as possible, get a custom length going, all that good stuff. So let's get into it. Okay, so here I am in the V3 web app and I have already selected a track. This one's called Olympus, and I'm assuming you guys already know how to obviously search for music in our browse page and also upload your edit to the browse page so you can even, test out how things work in there. But what I want to focus on in this video is specifically around actually using the app itself. So that's this edit page here. And the first thing I'm going to do is bring an edit in, because I think this is going to be most useful if we actually make this a kind of real, realistic kind of scenario. So I'm going to bring in something which is this trailer here called Waiting for Dawn. Now you can see that I can't actually select it right now because it's a .mov. So that's one of the first things I want to address actually, is how you can very, very quickly change this, and it's very, very easy. So if I just go to that particular file, and you can see it's a QuickTime movie and it's in a .mov format or whatever, then what we can do is we can literally just tap, click into it, and I'm going to just type .mp4 and hit return, and then it'll ask me whether I want to use that extension for sure, and I'll say yes. So once I've done that, if I go back to Filmstro and bring that in, we will now see that that is available, because the caveat with Filmstro is it has to be an MP4, but as I say, incredibly easy just to swap that out. So there we go. Now, the first prompt you're going to get when you bring an edit in is whether or not you want Filmstro to automatically match the music to the video length. I think for this example, I will say yes. So that you'll see how that looks then basically. So the current music length I think is 115-ish seconds, and if I say OK, then it's now adapted it down to be closer to the length of the video, which is just over 80 by the looks of it. The reason the video is just poking over the timeline there is because the algorithm has found that the absolute closest match we can do for this length here, which is something like 8123, is probably about 4, and it's about, it's not even a second off, I think. So that's why there's a slight discrepancy there, but the music is now the same length as the video. So let's have a listen through that, and then I'm going to get to work and see if I can make this fit. So I think first thing I'll do is I'll make sure that the video is unmuted, and I think what I might even do is I'll just mute the music entirely. So now we can just have a listen to what we've got in terms of the footage.
It was the same weekend that it was this battle for you firing your catapult, Mr. Rigby. You can be a godfather to my son. His name's James.
It'd be an honour.
We've murdered out here.
It's not murder here.
Who makes that decision? God? The generals? You? I'm not here to judge you, son.
Okay, cool. So turn the music back up, maybe bring it sort of halfway or quieter, so just so we can keep hearing the audio and stuff, and just have a little listen. It's obviously a bit intense, so we'll take that template initially down to bed. So for that, I'm just right-clicking in the timeline here, and then selecting bed. You can see that snapped all 3 of these parameters to the left. I'll hit return and start again by hitting the spacebar. Just going to turn that down.
It was the the same weekend that it was spelled for you borrowing your catapult, Mr. Rigby.
So I think by the time we get this, I think something has to change. We want to probably bring some momentum up just to kind of build a sense of anticipation here. I'm going to switch on Latch mode, which is this magnet icon here, because when we do so, any changes I make to any of these parameters will just apply those changes to the rest of the timeline. So as I'm kind of blocking in these big shapes, I don't want to just be recording tiny bits. I just want to, make my changes ongoing, if that makes sense. So you'll see what I mean. So let's just go from here.
You borrowing your catapult, Mr. Rigby.
So because I've done latch mode there, when I brought this up, it then obviously keeps it up for the rest of the timeline. So that's useful. So I'm going to play again from here and just see what this sounds like.
Borrowing your catapult, Mr. Rigby.
I might bleed some depth in at the same time. Yeah. Okay, so that's really nice. That's kind of just thickened that out a little bit more. Maybe I can accentuate that just by showing you what this sounds like without the footage now. So when this comes up, yeah, that just brings a little bit more in. Whereas if I undo that actually and play this without, see if you can tell the difference. Okay, so that's without depth, and if I just go Shift Command Z to bring that back, this is now with depth. I mean, it's actually quite subtle, but then that's what I like about Filmstro. There's definitely a subtlety to it, especially when you're only going halfway with the slider sometimes, but that's definitely brought a little bit more string in. That's just thickened it out a tiny bit more. We can just bring that up one more step then. Let's do the power as well, just to halfway again though, and I might do it more suddenly. Nice. I had to just use my ears there. Again, I know you guys are predominantly visual, but I think as, all human beings are innately musical, because we feel, we definitely listen to music with our muscles. And so you guys will just know, you will just sense when you maybe want to make these changes. Obviously be guided by your picture, but don't be afraid to just naturally let your ears guide what you're doing as well. So that power there I just brought up when it felt right as part of this little build. So let's listen to that one more time. So momentum and depth, and then here we go. Cool. So then with this, let's just check if that's synchronizing
Borrow
nicely.
your catapult, Mr. Rigby.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, so we get a natural symbiosis there. That's probably not the right word, but we get a natural sync there with the picture and the music, which is just lovely. And it just emphasizes that lovely moment there even further. Let's just take it a little bit further and see if I can just bring any other kind of things in to bear so you guys learn more about this. So, for example, actually, say I wanted this power change to be for some reason slightly different to what I recorded live, then there are a couple of ways you can do this. You could actually either just draw this now yourself, so you could just go in here and just change this shape. Say you wanted this maybe to be like that. Again, it's a subtle difference, but it'll sound different to what we first did. Say you didn't like, I don't know, how you kind of approach this last little bit. You can just correct that with the pen tool, or you could go ahead and just highlight the area you want to work on, making sure that you encapsulate the extremes of the position, in other words, the lowest and the highest part. And then what Filmstro will do is it'll take the very first part and the very last part of your selection and kind of basically do a transition over that. So again, if we just right click here and choose transition, I can go for a concave or a convex curve for that area. So you can see here I've replaced that now just with one click, and that's of course really clean now. I'm not saying this is exactly the right solution for this particular moment in the film. I think what I did hands-on, just manually myself, in real time with the slider was already fine. But we can listen to this, and by the way, if I press the spacebar now, we will be playing from the beginning of the selection. That's again one of those behaviors that we've built in. So that one there, because of that change we made with that transition, that's now too late for me. So I'm going to just undo that because that was just to show you guys. I'll remove the selection as well. So if I press spacebar now, we're just going to go from where the playhead is currently. But if I wanted to go back from there, I could either select and hit play, which is kind of a quick way of just traveling around the playhead, which I quite like.
No.
Or I just place the playhead and hit play. So let's have a last listen to this bit then. In fact, if the only thing I would do is I would actually bring this forward. So I might just do that and just see if that makes a tiny bit of a difference in terms of the synchronization. Let's have a listen. Yeah. Nice. And then let's say that, well, actually, let's carry on and see if again, if I can build in a couple of different changes. So you'll notice that latch mode has now become deactivated. I'm not entirely sure when that happened. I can't remember doing that myself. So watch out for that. So it's probably when I did the selection tool, actually, come to think of it, and when I did some drawing. I think the drawing automatically switches latch off. Should we just double check that? Yeah. So when you do the draw tool, using the pen tool, should I say, when you draw, that switches latch off. So when you go back to recording, if you're interested in keeping latch, just make sure you keep that there. All right, let's work on the next little bit. Okay, so for this incoming bit, obviously, often in films, we don't have to mimic what's going on screen. You're obviously all familiar with those big juxtapositions where, you get incredibly gentle, soft music for these ridiculously overblown moments of fury, hatred, violence, etc., and vice versa. So in this instance, though, I am just going to be quite literal. So I think there's no harm in having this music go up because the picture is so powerful at this point and there's so much noise, it won't hurt. So let's just do that. I haven't got my MIDI controller connected, so I'm not going to do all 3 sliders at once. But if you did have a MIDI controller, you can just connect that up here. And then depending on what kind of controller it is, you could actually use all 3 sliders at once and just push all values up at the same time. I'm going to have to do them one by one because I'm just using my mouse. So let's just start with power, seeing as I'm on here. If, by the way, you ever want to change to see whichever one's active, you just hit these little radio buttons, or by virtue of touching a slider, I know you're making a change, of course, when that happens, but by touching a slider, you are also immediately changing which of these parameters is in the kind of active view. All right, here we go then. Okay, we could foreshadow the incoming thing. We could maybe make the music go up before the violence ensues. That's an option you have. So let's just do that maybe, just for a contrast. Incoming! It wasn't terribly early, but then also I have got it still quite quiet. Let's see what this does. Incoming! Cool, and I think I'll leave the depth there. Because if I took it all the way to the right, ironically, even though it looks like I'm making everything its maximum position, it actually is here. This is the maximum. So I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm just going to show you another feature then. So if I unlink this, what I'm basically saying is that we don't want these sliders to record anything into the timeline. So I can now press play and then move the sliders as I wish to just demonstrate to you what things sound like. And this is useful if you want to just, for example, like I'm about to, try something for a certain scene, but without committing the changes to the timeline, which would then, require you guys to undo or delete or change or whatever. It's just a kind of, it's like an audition essentially. So let me just try that here. So I'll play from here and just show you. So this, I'll just do this as well, just to show you what I mean. So this is the maximum position of this track. If I do this, you can hear it's actually gone really, really dark now. So that's, yes, on the one hand, that is a kind of maximum setting, but this is just that little bit more intense because we have the high instruments as well, which cut through the mix more. So as humans, we're predisposed to hearing certain frequencies more than others. Primarily because of evolutionary reasons for being able to hear our children and crying babies and whatnot. So this is why this is an intense setting rather than this one where it's darker, because we've removed some of those high frequency instruments. Still a very powerful piece of music, obviously, at this point, but this is the maximum. So I'm going to relink these up, go from there, having satisfied myself that this was fine. So I'm just going to bring the power's already done, so I just need to bring this up now. Cool. Down a bit again. Cool. Now this is going to be the last thing I'll do for you guys, just to show you. And this is where in the film, if I just turn the music down, actually, there's this wonderful moment where, let's do that again. There, if we go from really loud to this wonderful transition. So here, then I want to just demonstrate the fact that, with Filmstro, it really is frame accurate, and you don't have to agonize over BPM or syncing things with beats and all this kind of stuff like you often have to do when using stock music, and you're cutting the music to your, you're cutting your edit to your music, which, is the wrong way around, essentially. Let's just have a go. So I can actually do this visually. I'm going to do this visually first. I'm going to just, it's not a true scrub, because we're not scrubbing. That's to do with how this is implemented here in terms of the web app. But let's just find this. So this is the black frame, I guess, here. So let's just try this for a start. So I've got the pen tool selected. We don't have to have the playhead moving, by the way. I know that earlier. I might have done that when it was moving, but we can use the pen tool on or offline, essentially. So I'm just going to kind of drag this down like that. I'll just switch to depth. Maybe, actually the depth can stay there, or bearing in mind what I said earlier about the frequencies and things, it might be even gentler if we actually bring the depth up at this point now. So let's do that. That's not a very strong curve I've done there. So why don't I just highlight this and then transition this to be convex? No, I meant the other one. There we go. Okay. And then what's the last one? Have I done that? Yep. So power, yeah, that has to come down. So I'll just pen tool this down real quick. Cool. Oops. Alrighty. So let's see what that does straight away. We'll put the film back on. We'll have the music where it was, and let's play.
You can be a godfather to my son. His name's James.
Okay, not bad, but that momentum is definitely needing to come off faster. So why don't we do another way? I'll just take this selection tool, select this entire thing actually, right click, and this time I'm going to use levels, and I'll just say level, not up of course, not middle of course, but all the way down. So just bang. So that's just taken that down. Because there's so much other noise going on, I don't think this sudden momentum change down suddenly like this is going to actually be a problem. Let's have a look. Okay. Oh, it's because I was wondering why that playhead was going from there. It's because my selection tool is still on. So if I just go back a bit. Okay, so I did it a bit too early. So let's just select again to there and bring the levels up. There we go. Corrected that now. And let's listen one more time.
You can be a godfather to my son. His name's James.
It'd be an honour.
Brilliant. And I think I'm going to do a similar thing with the depth. So I've already got a kind of marker, if you like, in the background, because I can see where that momentum is changing, even though it's not at the active, front kind of view. I can still see it enough to just grab my selection tool again and just mimic this now with the depth. So where this momentum falls off rapidly from 40 seconds, I guess, I'm just going to select up to about here and then right click, change the levels up for depth. So that's going to be mimicking that quick sort of change.
You can be a godfather to my son. His name's James.
Perfect. And then here, this volume change of the music here is only at the moment for preview purposes. So if that were me,
godfather to my son. His name's James.
In the final edit, I'd have it probably around about that low. Of course, we're going to, we can leave this wherever we want, but this is only for preview purposes. So what I mean by that is when you render this track out, the global volume change you make here doesn't affect this at all. Okay, you're just going to render this at the kind of optimum volume level. But obviously in your post, then you can, of course, make your own changes there. I will point out that we are definitely planning to bring the volume, the overall music volume control to bear in V3 as a fourth parameter that you can then also do a bit of drawing to, and that will then render that out hopefully as well. But really there's no shortcut for you guys doing this probably in your, I would argue that it's probably much better to do this in your Final Cut, because you don't want to bake something in and then later decide actually you got the level slightly wrong, and then because you've had to shift a sound effect or some of the dialogue changed or whatever it might be. So I would say that you want to be rendering this music at its full volume. All right, so we've gone over pen tool, we've gone over selection tool, we've talked about Latch, we know what the link does. If there were a sound in here that you didn't like, let's see if we can find one in here. Actually, we'll mute the video now. Have a listen when this music's playing back really strongly. Or even let me unlink that, and then I could just play the music and demonstrate what this does. So let's go from the start and have a little listen. So. Okay. Okay, now. I mean, there are several other drum parts as well, but hopefully you could just about make out that that horn wasn't there then after I switched these off. And what this does is it's a global change for now. Again, we have some cool ideas for future updates, but this is a global change where if you switch this horn part off, for example, then when you render this track later and export, then you will not have that horn part in the final mix. So that's one way of refining your mix even further, making it even more custom. Okay, so there's a few more things to talk about. I'm going to just save this real quick and then move on. So we, of course, have one of the coolest things you can do is say that this session here was only one of a couple of versions you needed. This is about a minute and a half, right? But let's say you had a 30-second cut down of this video, which I don't have right here either. I could have done that. That would have been quite cool. But let's just delete the video now. And now let's just change this to 30 seconds. Let's pretend we need a 30-second cut down of this track. So that's all I had to do. I just had to, type in the desired length in seconds, and then here it is. Obviously, you've seen it's eaten up all this stuff that was previously here, which is fine. That makes sense, doesn't it? And we've now got whatever we had left at the beginning. So for the 30-second edit, we might want to, of course, change this drastically, which is, understandable if the edit's changed. Or we can, leave it as is. That's totally up to you. The most important thing to point out is that this music will start the same, and it will definitely have an ending. It'll be different to the ending you might have had in the full mix, because I don't know what you guys, what the difference would have been in terms of the slider positions. But this is definitely a completely solid composition in and of itself. Just to prove that, I think I'll play it back. This is incredibly arbitrary changes now, these ones here, for this short edit. But let's just change it, play it back. And before I do so, I just want to draw your attention to probably something that, again, we are going to improve in the sense that we may make this even more dynamic. So this will probably already apply the best settings for you automatically, so you won't have to even get your hands dirty in here. And I appreciate for some of you guys who aren't obviously natural audiophiles, this isn't going to be, super intuitive, but the only one that you really have to kind of look at sometimes is this transitions one. So I'm going to set it to extra large, because what this does is our algorithm is doing something very, very clever and sophisticated to make this music fit 30 seconds. And when it does the clever thing, there's a transition involved. And if we make that a large transition, that's going to work really well for something as complex as this cinematic track, which has got loads of instruments, loads of different phrases and harmonies going on. So if it were, an EDM track or some modern chart thing or any other genre, we might look at using the default medium or even going to a small transition, and you'll find that works really well. But for this case, I'm going to leave it on extra large. The fade out, I always leave on small. That basically means that right at the end of the music, there's a small fade out just to kind of clean up the tail. But if you wanted it to sound genuinely like it's actually fading out rather than finishing with a musical ending, which all of our tracks do, then you could select extra large. And the cut down is actually for when you want to make it really short. And I'll demonstrate this. We can come back to this in a sec. So I'm going to demonstrate that real quick. So if I asked it to be 10 seconds, it's actually going to give me a modal saying that's actually too short. I can't do that. But it's telling us two things here. One is the music will have an audio tail, so it's important to recognize that you may actually achieve the correct result with a slightly longer setting, right? So in other words, you wanted a 20-second track. Well, actually, our music probably has, I don't know, 5 or 7 seconds of audio tail, which means that really our music was probably only about 13, 15 seconds long. So if you wanted 20, well, actually, you can probably put in 25 or 30, right, as your destination length, and you'll end up with something that is essentially 20 seconds of music plus audio tail. It's important we conserve those audio tails for you, because in post you can be in charge of how aggressively you truncate the end of the audio file and these kinds of things. And then the other thing to say is, this is now where it relates to this setting I was talking about. If you want to make it really short, so I don't know, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that, you're going to want to change the cut down setting to small. All right, so we've got a 26-second track now, and I've left everything else in place, and let's just have a listen to this then. Okay, and the music ended before it even could climb up. So the actual musical ending was about here. So I'm just going to change that to the maximum thing, just so we can have a listen. So yeah, just mind yourself, this is going to be quite loud. So yeah, the last hit was at about 17, and all of this is the audio tail. You can turn your volume right up as well, and you will hear something pretty much until the very, very, very end. So let's just do the very last step then, I think, which is to render this out. So to do that, make sure you save, and then simply choose the export when that becomes available, which is this one here, and then export soundtrack, and then it'll just render through. It then prompts you to download the track, and we can then save that. And then I will just show you one other thing. Yeah, this is important as well. If you want to continue editing, just hit yes, and it'll just keep the session going. It'll reload it, but it'll just return to that session. And if you don't want to, that's fine. You can just go back to this will just go back to the browse page. I will say yes, because I want to show you just the last couple of little bits in here. If you've had a session that was made in V2, then you will be prompted to open it in V2. I don't have any sessions here currently that are old, but yeah, that'll be easy and obvious for you guys. You can contact us through here, or re-trigger the tutorial modal there. And then the other thing to point out is you can look at your account and plans, but also the sample rate setting can be changed here. That's this thing here, where if for some reason on your system you're having an issue with the music playing back at a slightly different pitch or speed, that's just because there's a conflict between our sample rate and your device's core audio settings. So you can either change it in your device if you want to make it more convenient and it's a global change, or per session you'll just have to make that change here. You either switch it to 41 or 48,000. That's the sample rate. I think that is it. So last thing then is just to look at that render and show you that in that render then we have also done something which is to include the music. So here's your WAV file. So this is now the finished piece of music at 25 seconds. Here it is, 25 seconds of music. And then you also have a license per track, per specific download. So your name will appear here, the license terms are here, and the track details are there. So I hope you found this useful. This is definitely going to speed up your post-production music workflow like never before. So yeah, until next time, happy editing.